There is a new book which I'm holding in my hand, and the author is now coming to talk about energy efficiency in the built environment, Stephen Fawkes. And I understand you have discount codes in your pocket.
Oh, I do.
For this book. So if you want to, I actually read part of it, and he's not only a good speaker but a good writer too. And welcome to Ecosummit, Stephen Fawkes.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for the gratuitous book plugs are always welcome. So I've talked a lot before at other eco summits and elsewhere about the huge potential for energy efficiency. And a lot of that is in the built environment, of course. I've talked about the big money in energy efficiency. And as I've said before, the two people on this slide, Bolton and Watt, were energy efficiency pioneers. Watt invented a more efficient steam engine. I think everybody learns in school that he invented the steam engine, but he actually invented a more efficient one and made a lot of money. And I'm not going to dwell on potential because I think I'm preaching to the converted, But the IEA said if we went to a more efficient scenario, by 2035, it would be $18 trillion added to global GDP, which is US, Canada, and Mexico added together. So we're talking about huge amounts of money. But because we're here in London for the first time on Ecosummit, I'm going to kind of have a UK-focused presentation today. Maybe not so clear, but it's a good satellite photo of one of the particularly sunny days this summer when anybody who had photovoltaics on their roof was doing well that day. Just to put some context on energy spend in the built environment, if we look at non-domestic buildings, shops, offices, and so on, last year, 2012, the official numbers show it was about £13.8 billion. And if we look at the residential sector, it was about 33 billion. So we're talking about large amounts of money. And as we know, certainly here in the UK, as in a lot of other places, energy is in the headlines every day, partly because prices are going up. And this week we had the continuation of the political furore about energy prices when SSE announced a price rise. So these numbers are going to get bigger. And as we know, it's 40% energy, 40% of all energy and carbon is in the built environment. And overall, if you look at the investment opportunity, it's probably about a 200 billion investment opportunity in the built environment. So big numbers. But as I said, I don't really want to dwell on the potential. I kind of take that as read these days. More and more people have accepted the potential is there. The problem with energy efficiency in the built environment and across the whole economy is how do we achieve that potential? How do we make it happen? Because some of us have been talking about this potential for 30 odd years or more. We've always known it was there. So I just want to kind of quickly run through some of the things we need to do to overcome barriers to achieving that potential. First one is building performance models. Most of our energy performance models that are used to design buildings, whether it's new buildings or retrofits, are pretty poor in their accuracy. In fact, I was talking to some of the guys in California a few weeks ago who are involved in this field, and where they were looking at residential models, they said in a quarter of the cases surveyed, the model was out by 50%. And that's a huge error, a huge gap, and it has huge consequences if you're being asked to invest money, either as a householder or as an investor. So we need to improve our models. Materials were mentioned earlier, and I'm a great fan of new materials. This is a View glass, which is electrochromic glass, 20% energy saving. There's such a lot to be done on materials, particularly building materials and adaptive building materials. Integrated design, most buildings, most of the time, are still designed in the traditional way. So you have an architect, HVAC, lighting, all separate silos. And integrated design just makes a huge difference. So we need to build capacity around the ability of designers to use integrated design, and also capacity in the customers so they know what they're asking for. And the Empire State Building was a great example when the client, Tony Malkin of the Empire State Building, said, I want an energy efficiency retrofit. He called everybody in, and they came up with a standard design, and I think the savings were 10, 15%, and the payback was 5 or 6 years. And fortunately, sufficiently into this stuff and sufficiently powerful. They just said, if that's the answer you've got, there's the door. Come back when you've got an integrated solution. So integrated design, a lot to be done on integrated design. Big data, not going to talk about it. New York and Chicago. I talked last time in Ecosummit about some of the stuff Chicago's doing. Just putting data out there on energy consumption is proving to be quite powerful. Citywide and region-wide multi-site programs. You know, one of the problems with energy efficiency in the built environment from an investor's point of view is it's too small, and we need to really develop a capability to build programs that bring together different sites and different building owners. Finance, which is the area that I spend most of my time on how to finance energy efficiency projects. And the problems are small projects, it's not a recognized asset class, there's a lot of mispricing, there's issues of contract forms and lack of standardization, lack of secondary market. These are all now kind of recognized problems in the financing of energy efficiency. But at the end of the day, it comes down to investor confidence. Are investors confident enough yet to invest in large energy efficiency projects? Some of them are, but it's only a very small percentage that are ready to do that. And we need to turn it into a mass market. There is a project which is worth checking out if you haven't seen it, called the Investor Confidence Project out of the US. And this is about building protocols for the whole process, from looking at a building to begin with, right the way through measurement and verification and implementation. And it's bringing together the energy efficiency industry and the investors to build confidence in the process, so that when an investor looks at 10 or 20 projects, they will know that they've been assessed in this standardized way. And at the moment, investors don't know that. There's a huge range of error in most energy efficiency projects. Financing innovation. There's lots of talk about energy performance contracts, and lots of people who've come to this new say EPC is the answer. Well, it is the answer in some categories and some segments, but it's not the only answer. And we need a lot more innovation around contract forms. And some of that's starting to happen, particularly in the US with PACE, ESAs, MESAs, and a new one called MEETS. I'm not going to go into all of those structures, but there's innovation happening in contract form, and that's important. But there is one real barrier to energy efficiency which doesn't get talked about very much, and I'm starting to talk about it a bit more. And this is the real problem with energy efficiency. It is fundamentally boring. It's fundamentally dull. And it's a bit of a blow to those of us who spent 30 years doing it. You kind of realize that actually, for most people, it's really dull. It's technical, it's about saving money, and we all moan about our electricity bills at home, but do we do much about it? People do not wake up in the morning and say, let's buy some energy efficiency. So as I've said before, we need to look at this in a new way. So as we're in London, I decided to change my 3D glasses slide to one of our great institutions, Her Majesty. And I'm going to use another great British institution to show what needs to happen, and that's Top Gear. And I think most people are familiar with Top Gear. Whether you like it or dislike it, it's a global phenomenon. It's watched by 350 million people a week in 170 countries, which is phenomenal. So Jan will be quite happy if Ecosummit TV gets anything like that kind of coverage. So Top Gear used to have the cool wall, which is a way of deciding which cars are cool and which cars aren't cool. So for only the second time ever, I'm going to do the energy efficiency cool wall. And unfortunately, I can't do it interactively. But you know, if we look at something like smart meters, lots of talk about smart meters, fundamentally, seriously uncool, boring. There is no model. There's nothing that really makes them attractive to consumers. Even saving money, you know, in itself isn't cool. We all like to save money at one level, but it's not as exciting. It's not as cool as going out and spending money or making money. It's just pretty uncool. Even PV on the roof. I mean, this one's a bit more debatable. Some people might say it's cool. Really, we're talking about a 50-year-old technology that's supported by subsidies. And okay, it's kind of cool to get a check for some of your energy, but it's not very, very exciting, really. A bit cooler is something like the Nest thermostat. I mean, the only thermostat in history that sold out and had a waiting list, which was quite an achievement, and kind of changed the whole perception of thermostats. As I've said before, I do have one sitting on my desk, which is a very good paperweight, because we don't actually have individual thermostats in my building. But anyway, it's still cool. And then sort of something I saw a couple of years ago, and then I see that Philips have done something similar, which I think is kind of seriously cool. And you kind of test it on people who aren't into energy, and they say it's cool. And this is the tunable LED lighting. So the idea is you have an app on your phone. You go somewhere on holiday where the light is nice, like the south of France or somewhere like that, and you say, the light kind of makes the holiday, really. So you kind of record the light quality on your phone, and you come back home and you go like this, and your lights adjust to that light quality. And now that is seriously cool. The fact that it saves 80% when you switch to LEDs, 80% of your electricity bill, is almost irrelevant. That won't make people buy it. What will make people buy it, and I've tested it on lots of people just telling them about it, is they say, that's really cool, I want it, and they will go out and buy it. So that's, the challenge we have is making things cool like that. Sorry, I missed one there. So I think the other thing is, there's lots of bits of technology, whether it's Nest thermostats, materials, retrofit materials, glazing, and so on. The real challenge is actually new business models that bring all those together with finance in a way that is cool for the consumer, particularly if you're talking about residential market. We've seen in the UK the Green Deal and the problems with the Green Deal adoption. It's just dull. There isn't a good customer proposition. Somebody needs to bring all that stuff together along with energy supply and make a much neater proposition that works for people. So I think the challenge for everybody who's interested in this problem is really to go out and develop new products, new business models that turn energy efficiency into cool rather than boring. So that's my message, really. Everybody needs you, the entrepreneurs, and us, and the funders and the venture capitalists to think about how to turn energy efficiency from boring into cool. So that's my presentation for this morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Do you have a question for Steve? Please raise your hand and wait for the microphone.
Love the point about dullness being the biggest enemy. Before you got on to that key point, you'd been through a number of different things that need to happen in order to boost efficiency.
It was a short list from a longer list, but carry on.
Well, and so now I'm going to ask you to make it shorter.
Okay.
What would you say is sort of the principal challenge to address, or the fundamental, the most important one of those?
Well, I think it is about, I use the phrase capacity building, which sort of comes from the development bank kind of mentality, but, and having been in the business long enough to be on my kind of second upwave of interest in energy efficiency, we did have a lot of capability around energy management and energy efficiency. Okay, we didn't have the internet and we didn't have all the kind of IT stuff that we have now, but in management of organizations, had capacity to think about energy efficiency and implement good programs. And that capacity is coming back, but we need to do more to build that capacity at senior decision maker level, whether it's corporate or utilities, government, and so on. And we still have, despite all of our best efforts on energy efficiency, you still have a seesaw which is completely biased in favor of supply, whereas when you look at the data over the last 30 years, and I've used this in my last presentation at Ecosummit, if you look at the data, energy efficiency over the last 30 or 40 years has supplied more energy services than all the other things put together. But we just obsess about nuclear, renewables, fracking, blah, 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 which is supply side. So the conversation is still 95% supply and 5%, if we're lucky, 5% efficiency. We need to change that conversation. And energy efficiency should be the first source of energy supply because it's still a massive resource. And subtitle of my book is Cheapest, Fastest, Cleanest Source of Energy. Not necessarily in that order, but...
You had another question, Benjamin? Wait for the microphone.
I'm a man of many questions. Few answers.
I know that.
I was really excited about your sort of coolness chart. Are there any? And I can't believe I want to tease out of you a few more cool factors or cool applications you've seen and you've come across on your travels. And the second question, but that might mean we have to do another Ecosummit. Is what does it boil down to? I mean, cool is one way of naming it, but what are the attributes that something needs to have in order to scale, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects of that, aren't there? The cool is about buying with the heart, as somebody said to me yesterday, and the other stuff is buying with the head, which for a commercial organization is always kind of predominating, and that's about economics and being confident that when somebody says this project will save you X, that it will actually save you X plus or minus a few percent. Whereas I think now the underlying lack of confidence is you go to a CFO and say this project will save you X, and his kind of internal reaction, it may not be an external reaction, his internal reaction is, well, that's X plus or minus 50%, 100%, I don't know. So the confidence factor is critical. I mean, so that's the second question.
And anything else you've seen similar to the lighting thing or anything that's stuck with you?
Well, I think clearly the Nest is interesting, you know, and they've got in trouble with their advertising earlier in the year, but that sort of stuff, and I think some of the modeling aspects, simulation. I was looking at something just this morning about real-time control, that kind of thing.
Okay,
cool. But we can talk more about many later.
Thank you very much, Steve. Here's your speaker gift. You get a book.
Great.
Wonderful.
All right.